In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Kalimera.
Kalimera.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. In this morning's gospel, we heard of 10 lepers being healed, and only one of them returning to give thanks to God. This made me think of two things. It's awfully close to that 80-20 rule, which, in all organizations and all structures, there always tends to be about 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. Or maybe if it's in a company, you'll have 20% of the salespeople are making 80% of the sales. And this is just a rule that tends to appear throughout, humanity, society, organizations, over and over and over again. And for those who tend to be the ones who put a lot of extra work in, this can become very frustrating, and they become angry, and they become resentful of their fellow brothers and sisters, their co-workers, maybe it's in their family, their siblings, whatever it is. But this is something we need to continuously be fighting against, both of those of us who find ourselves on the 20% side where we're doing lots of work, and those of us who find ourselves on the 80% side where we're not doing as much work. We both have a struggle and a cross to bear and something that we need to improve on. It also reminded me of basically how a child is, because so many times children, they take everything for granted. Oh, Daddy, can you open this for me? Mommy, can you reach this for me? I want this, I want the other thing. And then, of course, the parents, we always indulge our children. The grandparents, we indulge our children. And we give them the thing that they ask for. And what do they say? Typically nothing. Sometimes they say thank you, because we always forget to express gratitude. And we notice it in children because we're very critical of children, but we forget to notice it in ourselves because we give ourselves a pass all the time for all of our terrible behaviors. We always want to judge other people for their mistakes, but when it comes to our own mistakes, we like to gloss over them and think that they're not so bad. But this lack of gratitude is not something that only 80% of people struggle with. It's not something that only children struggle with. It's not only something that 9 out of 10 lepers who were cleansed in this morning's gospel struggle with. A lack of gratitude is something that almost each and every person struggles with in their life. And when we have a lack of gratitude, it becomes profoundly destructive in our lives. Imagine not having gratitude in your home, what that will do. What that will do to the harmony in your marriage, what that will do between the relationship with you and your children. Imagine if you don't show any gratitude at work. If you're an employer and you have your employees working under and you never express gratitude to them, yes, of course you pay them, okay. But how hard is it to say thank you? And how much does it increase morale? But even worse, if you never say thank you to your employees, if you never express gratitude to them, how despondent will they become, and how much will the company suffer? In civic organizations, and we can think especially of the church because we're gathered here in a church, when everyone becomes, when there becomes a culture of complaining, and everybody says there's not this, there's not that, there's not the other thing, the heat's not working so well. And the heat is not working so well today. It's very cold. But we could also be thankful that the heat doesn't have to work so well all the time because we live in Florida. And this is an anomaly of a week. And we don't have to contend with these temperatures all the time. So rather than dwelling on the negative side of the heat not working so well today, we could be thankful the heat does not have to work so well. And this, of course, affects our entire society. When we look around the world around us and all we see is the negative and all we see is doom and gloom, or we surround ourselves with those who are constantly harping on the bad things, the broken things, the terrible things in our society, it brings us down, it brings our families down, it brings everybody down, and it leads us to live a life that feels quite literally like hell on earth. And we start to actually feel that way. And we start to feel so separated from God, separated from our fellow man, that we live in this profound darkness. And it can go, again, in all of these levels, from our homes and our families, all the way to the entire society. But how do we respond then if we see something that's truly broken, something that really is not right, something that needs to be fixed? How can we respond to that? Well, I brought up the example of the air conditioner. I don't know, I haven't had a chance to think about that one too much. But, maybe we could call a technician out and have them look at it. We could just put an extra little coat on. That could be a good response. There's other things that we can do. But in the world, we see really big problems, and we see struggles that people have. And one of the things that I thank God is that we were able to purchase a home when we were able to, because I look at people who are just a few years younger than me, and purchasing a home is almost an impossibility. And this is something that is a real problem, and it's a real issue. And we have to actually acknowledge that it's there without becoming despondent and think of a way that we can respond to this. And we have to be very honest about the generational divides that exist even in this issue. I think a lot of times the younger generations, they take for granted the things that they've been given by the older generations. But many times the older generations, particularly the baby boomer generation, takes for granted the ease in which, the economic ease, we can say at least, in which they grew up and they raised families in. How easy it was in those days to be able to get a decent job that paid a decent salary, that you could afford a decent home, and you could live a decent life, particularly on one income. This is something that was not a pipe dream 30 years ago, 40 years ago. This was just the reality. But for young people today, it is beyond the scope of possibility for the vast majority. And we have to recognize that that's real. And that really causes true suffering and true pain. But as we recognize that that's real, we cannot become despondent about it, and we must still be grateful for the many gifts and blessings that we have. And so one of the things that we can do is to, whatever resources that we have been blessed with, to be thankful for those resources and to take good care of them, to be good stewards of them, to do the best that we can to take care of ourselves, to take care of our children, to take care of our grandchildren. And it doesn't matter what generational side you find yourself at. If you're a baby boomer generation, maybe you need to be considering more how you can take care of your children and grandchildren. Maybe you can reflect on how easy it was for you to purchase a home and start to put a little bit more money aside to help your children to pay for your grandchildren to go to college. If you're a younger generation, if you're Gen X, if you're a millennial, even Gen Z, maybe stop thinking about yourself so much and complaining about how hard it is for yourself. It's not going to fix anything. Maybe just work a little bit more, and it's not fair. It doesn't have to be fair, but it's life. Life's not fair. And maybe rather than thinking about how you don't have as large of a home as your parents had when they were starting out, think about the things that you do have and the knowledge that you have and the resources that you have and how you can make a plan that you can do even more for your own children, how you can do even more for your own grandchildren. Not be thinking about yourself so much. It's really hard for us to step outside of ourselves because we always want to think about ourselves. But this is part of what it is to live a life of gratitude, to not be centered on ourselves, to be centered on love for others. But most of our day-to-day struggles and our worries and our lack of gratitude, they don't come from these macroeconomic issues. They don't come from these big picture issues. They come from our day-to-day struggles in our life. They come from how we are, again, in our families, in our workplace, in the organizations that we're a part of. So, how can we build up a practice of gratitude? And I actually want to ask from everybody, for some of our ideas too. How can we practice gratitude in our homes? What is a way we can practice gratitude? Don't all jump at once. Say thank you to the people that you love. Say thank you to your spouse when they take care of something. Even if it's something that they ordinarily take care of. Even if it's something that you guys have decided together is an expectation that they will take care of. Thank them for it. And the same thing with your children. Just as we said last week, it's important for us to ask for forgiveness from our children when we make mistakes. It's also important for us to show gratitude to our children when they do things well, to praise them, to make them feel loved and appreciated. This should be something that the whole family is doing towards one another. What's something we can do in our workplace that we can show gratitude? Well, do a little extra work. Be thankful for your employer that they've given you the opportunity to come in and provide for your family. And so maybe you show up a few minutes early, maybe you stay a few minutes late. You don't want to do that all the time and abandon your family, but sometimes, put a little extra effort. You might see one of your coworkers is struggling. Ask them if you can help with something. Just check in with them, even if you're not able to do some of their work to take that burden off of them. If you see a coworker who's not in a good spot, just check in and say, hey, how are you? Is everything okay? Show gratitude just for their presence. What about we could say a civic organization, but let's use the church as an example. How can we show gratitude here in our community? Volunteering. Maybe we find ourselves in a generation where we're struggling to be able to find our time, our money to be able to put a down payment on our home. But maybe we have some time and we can come and we can help clean up the facilities. We can help change the air filters. We can do whatever needs to be done. We can help to teach. We can help to offer lessons for our young people. We can be involved in so many different ways. Another great way to be expressing gratitude in the church is to not be making comparisons all the time. So many times we look at, well, this church has that church has the other thing, the church down the street's doing this program. We could be thankful for the programs that our church does offer. And before we complain about we don't have this weekday liturgy or the other weekday liturgy or whatever else it is, we can be participating more fully in what is already offered. I would love for us to have services each and every day. That would be a beautiful thing. But when we have relatively widely celebrated saints and we have a liturgy and 7 people show up, 15 people show up, it makes it discouraging to schedule even more liturgies. So we need to be able to be participating fully. That's a great way to show our gratitude. And in our entire society, I know some of us right now, not some of us, if you look at any of the polls on anything, there's really very few people who think that things are going especially well. And it doesn't matter if you like this way or if you like that way, whichever way you like it, nobody thinks things are going especially great right now. But how can we show gratitude in spite of that? Because I think if everybody's thinking something's wrong, something's probably wrong. So something probably is wrong. But in spite of that, how can we show gratitude on a societal level? I'll go to sort of an extreme because it was the thing that came to my mind. We can be thankful that, no matter how negative our mind is, we know that there's still groceries in the grocery stores today. You might be so negative that you think tomorrow they're not going to be there, right? But at least you know that today they're there. You might think that everything is going to totally collapse and we're not going to have electricity tomorrow. I would urge you to temper that a little bit. But even if you think it's that bad, which few people do, The lights are on today. We could be thankful for the things that we have here and now today. And we never know what tomorrow is going to hold. We never know. We always pray and hope that things will be better. We hope that it'll be easier for our children to be able to afford homes, to send our grandchildren to college, and to be able to do all of these things. But we don't know. The best we can do is be thankful for the gifts that we have. Be thankful for the blessings that we've received, to practice gratitude in all of these ways. Because when we practice gratitude, we achieve the opposite of when we don't practice gratitude, obviously. When we don't practice gratitude, we become despondent, we become miserable. We feel like there's a dark cloud around us. We feel like we're living truly in hell. But when we practice gratitude in our homes, in work, in our civic organizations, in the society around us, in all of these places, we start to actually feel like we're living in heaven on earth. We feel closer to God. We feel closer to our fellow man. We feel overcome with joy. All of the darkness and all of the despair and all of the heavy weight that's placed on us is taken away. And we don't realize how much control we have over that in our own lives, how much we can affect that, and how much not only are we affecting that for ourselves, but we affect that for those who are around us. If you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, do you want your children to be miserable? Of course not. So don't be miserable yourself. If you are miserable, they will be miserable. If you are joyful, they will be joyful. If you express gratitude, they will express gratitude. So let us follow the example of the one leper in this morning's gospel and always give thanks to God for all of the good that he has done in our lives. Amen.
Amen.
Did you know we actually read the gospel twice on Sundays? Yes, a few of us did, because during the Orthros we read from, it's called the Eothinon, the morning gospel, and it's a cycle of 11 readings. And it's 11 readings that all depict the resurrection of Christ from all of the different gospel accounts. And of course we do this because Sundays is the day that we remember the resurrection, every Sunday, not just for Pascha. And this is actually the reason why Christians gather together on Sundays. Because if we just read the Bible and we read in the Old Testament, we'd find that, well, God's telling us to get together on Saturdays. But then after the resurrection, the early Christians, even from the apostles, they realized we need to move our day of celebration, our day of gathering, from Saturday to Sunday, because now the day that we're really going to get together, the primary day, the first day, has to be the day that we remember the resurrection. And as we read the morning gospel that centers itself on the theme of the resurrection, ordinarily we read the gospel, the deacon from the pulpit, or the priest from the royal gate. But this gospel is read always by the priest and from the side of the altar table. And this is because the altar table is symbolic of the tomb of Christ. And in some of the resurrectional accounts, we hear that the women went to the tomb early in the morning, and when they got there, they saw a man standing to the right side of the tomb, and there was an angel. And that angel was the one who proclaimed the resurrection. And so the priest stands to the side of the table, like the angel did at the right side of the tomb, and proclaims the resurrection. And one thing that's commonly done, that's not always done, but it's a fairly common tradition, is that the priest is not yet wearing his philonion. This is the outer garment. And we know that sometimes this changes colors. Sometimes this is red, sometimes it's gold, it's blue, it depends on the feast day. And the reason why the priest sometimes won't wear this when he reads that gospel is because he'll always be wearing the sticharion, which typically is always white. It's symbolic of the baptismal garment. And so if the priest is standing on the side of the altar table, which is symbolic of the tomb of Christ, and he's standing there in the place of the angel who's proclaiming the gospel, proclaiming the resurrection, the good news, then it makes sense for him to be standing there in just a white garment. And so this is a practice that we have in our church. And of course, we know it's hard for us to come very early for the Orthros service, but it is a beautiful opportunity for us. And in many ways, the Orthros is kind of the original catechesis, the original teaching of the church. The hymns of the Orthros, the gospel reading that's provided for us, all that's given to us in the Orthros service is very beautiful and helps us to come to a fuller, more complete understanding of our faith. So I hope and pray that on occasion, it'd be wonderful every week, but on occasion at the very least, we can make that extra sacrifice, that extra offering back to God to come and to participate in the Orthros service.